What we're going to do today is talk about how high is your personal burden of stress. So we're still on question number 1. I want you to jot down any of these next items that will be in bullet points here. What is your personal burden of stress? And let's get a sense of how high it might be. So how do you know if you have a high burden of stress? Well, are you somebody who feels high stress? Do you have high stress in your life? Do you feel stress keenly? I feel like it's hard to live through right now. I feel like the world's on fire and might as well just go back to bed is somehow what it feels like. And I'm not making light of it. I truly actually 100% feel that way for myself personally. Are you an empath or are you sensitive? Then that can tell us that your burden of stress is pretty high. Do you feel all the feels? Are you somebody who cries at telephone commercials? Oh God, that was even more strong when I was pregnant. Yeah. Do you have a chronic disease, an autoimmune condition, something with the word itis at the end? Yeah, you've got a pretty high burden of stress when that's going around. Are you tired? Do you have low energy? That can be a really good indicator of a high burden of stress. Do you have brain fog or fatigue with thinking, mental fatigue? Do you have low stamina or do you maybe get sick often? Like, why do I get every single stinking flu that comes through and why do I have it 4 times each time? Oh, I think your burden of stress is pretty high. When your burden of stress is high, you're soon going to learn that your immune system is a bit hampered. Oh, yeah. Okay, let's keep going. Still in question number 1. Let's go on to the next point. Do you have a history of trauma or intergenerational trauma? You don't have to name it, and we don't need to go into it. And my apologies if I trigger any type of stress response over this, but it is one of the pieces to consider in how high your personal burden of stress is. And intergenerational trauma, I mean, the people that you came from, there's biochemical things that actually get passed down and genetic markers that get turned on. And they do that so that your body can react sooner, so that you can get out of harm's way sooner, so that you can survive better than the generation before you did. It's amazing. Oh, sheesh, it makes it hard to go through the day. Yeah, totally. Do you have high blood pressure? That's an indication that your burden of stress is pretty high. Are you having struggles through perimenopause or menopause? And I will also say in this transition, there's a lot of hormonal shifts that go on in a female body, and this can add to the personal burden of stress. I'm so sorry. Yeah, we need to go super easy on our middle-aged women. It's because I'm right in it. I'm like, everyone be nice to me. Are your cholesterol numbers high? That's another really good indicator that your personal burden of stress is quite a bit high. And that's just because some of the biochemistry that goes on in the body actually trip the system to produce more cholesterol, the higher your personal burden of stress is. Why? Because cholesterol is your body's band-aids. If your burden of stress is high, you're going to have a lot of repair to do. So what helps to do the repair? Cholesterol. Cholesterol is protective. Do you have histamine or mast cell activation issues? Yeah, honey, your personal burden of stress is pretty high, pretty sky high. And in fact, to the point where it trips potentially that activation of your mast cells in order to release more histamine, which now shows up as more symptoms and a worsening of your symptoms if they're always around. So that's fun. You having fun yet? No, Luca, still on question 1. Don't worry. We're just giving a brief assessment so that you can get a good sense. Do I have a high personal burden of stress? Is your thyroid struggling? Do you take Synthroid? Did somebody tell you have Hashimoto's or that you have hypothyroiditis? Is someone checking your T4, T3 levels? Is someone checking your thyroid stimulating hormone? Do you have somebody who keeps sending you every 6 months for blood work to check to see how your thyroid hormones are? Hi. Yeah, there's way more to thyroid struggling. And I would even say people who have a subclinical thyroid issue it would be an indication that the burden of stress is starting to rise. Fun. Is your metabolism off? So metabolism is anything that is part of getting energy into the system, processing that energy, and then sending the energy where it needs to go and utilizing the energy to do a human thing. Raising my arm is a metabolic act. Putting together my grocery list is a metabolic act. Making a human is a metabolic act. Having emotions is a metabolic act, just to give you an idea. So is that metabolism off? Are your hands and feet cold? Are you having a hard time pooping? Is one of the main ways it can show up. Are you constipated? Have you been constipated for years? Is your mood struggling? Do you feel like you're having to move through fog like this all day long? Your blood sugars are dysregulated. So this could be type 2 diabetes. It could be somebody saying you have metabolic syndrome. It could be that you get hangry or that you don't do well without having meat at every meal. That's me. So blood sugar dysregulation issues since the age of 21. And nothing diagnosed. Totally went to go check it out. Was super struggling, and one person at one point in downtown Toronto said, "Oh, I think you're hypoglycemic." And I was like, I can't function. My coworker who was pregnant at the time and I at 2:30 every afternoon would go down for a hamburger in the food court at the bottom of our building. That was the only way we could get through our days. Thank God I realized that meat helps. Anyway, hormonal imbalance. Hormonal imbalance can be an indication that your personal burden of stress is high. So anything to do with hormones. Thyroid is one, but others are reproductive issues. So if you have fertility issues, if you have troubles with your period, your menstrual cycle, troubles through menopause or perimenopause. Other hormonal imbalances can show up as sleep troubles. Sleeping is a hormonal act. Anything that requires hormones has a potential of being an indicator that your personal burden of stress is high. Adrenal fatigue is another one. So that's totally tied into the hormonal imbalance. Your adrenals are an organ that produces hormones. Hormones are like telephone calls to get things happening in the body. And adrenal fatigue means your poor adrenals are making phone calls all day long and they're like, I don't want to be on the switchboard anymore. I'm like, can I go to sleep?